to them to decide where to strike first, pair the operatives with their assignments, and send out the orders. Any single one of those targets could change history, much less a fast, violent run through them all. That was exactly what Hala hoped to pull off. Every American life they could take was one more step in the proper direction. There was no such thing as too much punishment for the people of America. Or, as they like to say in this country of excess and greed, more is more. Hala! Tariq appeared suddenly in the bathroom door, dripping wet. His chubby body was drifted with mounds of soap bubbles and nothing else. "You look ridiculous," she said, but with a laugh. It was good to see him so at ease. He was obviously drunk on their good fortune. "Hala," he sang out, and began a little dance for her while he was at it. "Come join me, the hot water is endless." "Not while I'm working, darling. And it's Julia, remember?" she said. "Ah, yes," he grinned broadly. "I forgot that I'm in love with another woman." They were Julia and Daniel Aziz from Philadelphia now, and they had American passports to prove it. They'd arrived at the Four Seasons Hotel just the day before. Uncle called it hiding in plain sight. The pace of all these changes was absolutely breathtaking. Only 2 days earlier they had been waiting in the dark to find out what would happen next. And now this. After Tariq had sloshed back into the tub, Hala returned to her work. Let him enjoy this ridiculous American palace a while longer, she thought. The less he worried, the better it was for everyone. As far as Tariq was concerned, everything had changed for them. But it hadn't, of course. The elders were still watching. It was more important than ever that she and Tariq make a good impression, and soon. If they weren't careful, they could become expendable to the family just as quickly as they had risen to this position. Be prepared to die at any time. That, above all, remained true, because it wasn't just an opportunity they'd been given. Hala knew. It was also a test. This war was now in their hands.
Chapter 52. I can't say I was surprised to find out that Nana Mama had forbidden Bree from bringing Ava over to Child and Family Services the next day. Never mind that I had insisted on the trip to Family Services. Bree told me on the phone that afternoon that Nana was digging in her heels. So I came home determined to get the situation taken care of myself. Nana was waiting for me when I got there. I found her alone, reading Little B at the kitchen table, like a security guard. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I'm not going to fight about this, Nana. We can't help every kid on the streets of D.C., I said, and kept moving. "Who said anything about that?" she called after me, but I was already halfway to the stairs. I hated being cast as the bad guy. It wasn't like I thought Nana was crazy for feeling the way she did, but I truly believed I was doing the right thing here, for everyone involved, even the girl. At least up until what happened next. When I got upstairs to Damon's room, Ava was sitting on the bed reading one of his old X-Men comics. "Ava, it's time to go," I said. "I'm going to bring you down to the intake center and get you settled over there, okay? Just like we talked about last night." She wouldn't even look at me. She lifted and lowered her very cold shoulder and swung her feet onto the floor. Maybe she'd been getting pointers from Nana. Then, as she got up to shuffle over to the door, I noticed something on the floor behind her, something under the bed. "What's that?" I said, pointing. "None." She didn't even glance back. The girl was a terrible liar. "Hang on a second." I walked over and knelt down on the rug to have a look. There, between the bed and the nightstand, was a small pile of food. I saw half a loaf of bread, some bananas, a sleeve of crackers, and a jar of peanut butter. Honestly, I wasn't so surprised. It's not unusual for a kid from the streets to hoard food, given the chance. And I wasn't even remotely mad about it either. Ava had done this by instinct, as likely as anything. Survival instinct. Maybe that's why it broke my heart. Why should a 13-year-old kid have to think about where her next meal might be coming from? Why should Ava? Or anyone? Just like that, something shifted inside me. It happened the way these things do sometimes, when you least expect it, or even want it. But that was also the moment that Ava made a break for the stairs. When I turned around, she was gone. "Ava, wait!" By the time I got out to the hallway, she was already down by the front door trying to get out. Our deadbolt's a little complicated, a little tricky, and it was slowing her down. "Ava!" I called out again. As I came closer, she gave up and ran for the back of the house instead. She crashed right through the kitchen door and just kept going. I heard the sound of breaking glass. Then Nana's voice. "What in heaven's name?" When I rushed into the room, Ava was still there. One of the panes in the back door was shattered, and her hand was bleeding. She stood staring at it, frozen in her tracks like a trapped animal. I put my hands out in front of me. "It's okay," I said. "Really. Everything's okay." Nana grabbed a dish towel to wrap the cut. She put her arm around Ava and made her sit down. "Nothing to worry about," she said in a soothing voice. "Just a little cut. But you go ahead and cry if you need to, sweetheart." "I'm sorry," Ava said, more to Nana than to me. "I didn't mean to." "Don't worry about it," I told her. "It doesn't matter about the food, the window either. None of it matters. We'll work it all out." Still, Ava tried to squirm away toward the door. She stood up again, and Nana pulled her back down with that surprising strength of hers. "You sit down right now," she commanded. "You're not going anywhere, young lady." I stayed where I was, giving her a little space. "You know what, Ava?" I said. "Nana's right. We don't have to make any decisions about this tonight." But, in fact, that wasn't entirely true. I'd already decided something. Nana was right. Maybe we couldn't save every kid on the streets of D.C., but there was no reason, no good enough reason, why we couldn't help this one, right here, right now, even if it was only for a little while. I'd call whoever I needed to in the morning, get an expedited home check, pull a few strings if I had to, make things right for this young girl. "Just stay," I said. "Please." Chapter 53. The next morning, Bree took over at home, and I was back at work. Whatever influence the First Lady had exerted on my behalf, I had no trouble getting onto the Braniff School campus, inside the gates this time. I got there early so I could get a better feel for the place before the school day started. I wanted to retrace, as much as I possibly could, Ethan and Zoe's footsteps on the morning they had disappeared. As I came up the front drive toward Braniff House, the school's Georgian-style mansion of a main building, I couldn't help thinking about the modest charter John and Billy Sampson were trying to start up just a few miles from here. It was a world apart, that's for sure. Braniff House was the crown jewel of an 80-acre campus with the kind of restored beauty that convinced parents to part with $45,000 a year for middle school. It was also where the Coyle kids had last been seen. What had happened to them? I started in the main foyer. According to the reports I'd read, this is where a fight had broken out that morning between Zoe and another boy, Ryan Townsend. It hadn't lasted long, and Secret Service Agent Findlay immediately pulled both the Coyles away from the scene and into an adjacent lecture hall. At 8:22 a.m., Findlay had radioed his team that he was giving the kids 2 minutes alone to speak privately. At 8:24, he opened the door again and found the lecture hall empty. About 90 seconds after that, the van driven by Ray Pinkney had gone tearing off campus through the east gate without Ethan and Zoe on board, as it turned out. What that left was a 3.5-minute window, from the last time Findlay saw the kids until that van left the school grounds. Somewhere in there, a kidnapping had taken place. So, what happened in those 3.5 minutes? I let myself into the lecture hall and closed the door behind me. The room was high-ceilinged, with several austere portraits looking down from the walls. It was a little creepy, actually, but definitely imposing. It made even a big man like me feel small. Whatever had gone down in that room, Zoe and Ethan couldn't have been there for long. The clock was ticking on those 3.5 minutes, whether they knew it or not. There were 2 doors at the front, both covered by the same security camera in the hall outside. The only other possible exits were the 5 windows at the back. Agent Findlay had reportedly found the center one unlatched. I went to it now. I hopped up on the heat register, slid open the window, and ducked outside. It was an easy drop to the ground, landing me behind a thick tangle of lilac bushes. Footprints found in the dirt that day confirmed that two people Ethan and Zoe's size had come this way. But where did they go from here? Were they still alone at this point? When, exactly, did things turn horribly wrong? We had just a few facts. The rest of the scenario was mostly supposition. But there was one other known piece of the puzzle, and I needed someone here at the school to show it to me. Chapter 54. George O'Shea was the head of maintenance at Braniff. He was a big, red-headed fireplug of a guy, with arms that bulged against the sleeves of his uniform the same way his gut strained at the buttons in front. I found him in his basement office under the main building. "Nice to meet ya," he said, half crushing my hand. "I'm guessing you came down to see the tunnel. Headmaster's office called ahead." "If you have a minute," I said. "Come on with me. I'll give you the nickel tour. 5 cents off today." "Much obliged. Thank you." There had been a lot of speculation in the press about the underground passage at Braniff, and a lot of assumptions that had figured into the kidnapping somehow. What wasn't public knowledge was that Ethan and Zoe's electronic locators had been found down here, smashed to pieces at the far end of the tunnel. Whether someone had deliberately put them there to throw us off the scent or dropped them on their way through was still a question mark. I followed O'Shea through the basement to an old black steel door at the back. It looked original to the building, except for the brand-new hasp and padlock that had been bolted on. The custodian used a key from his retractable ring to open it for me, and then flipped a light switch just inside. "Whole thing's like a T," he said, leading the way. "Straight on is just a sealed-up hatch where the old coal barn used to be. But if we take a right turn up here, it comes out in the groundskeeping shed by the playing fields." It was supposedly true that Noah Braniff had used this tunnel as part of the Underground Railroad back in the 19th century. It had clearly been refitted since then, with riveted I-beams, a poured concrete floor, and tile on the domed ceiling. Mostly it was used for storage now. There were mesh lockers with cleaning supplies near the entrance, and gardening tools and sports equipment as we got closer to the far end. Very orderly, surprisingly clean. O'Shea did most of the talking as we walked. He'd been with the school since Clinton, he told me, and had seen a lot of big families come through, although none bigger and more important than the Coyles. "What's your impression of Ethan and Zoe?" I asked. "What kind of kids are they?" "Ethan's a good enough egg," he said. "Scary smart, too. A lot of the other kids think he's kind of weird. He got picked on some. Make that a lot." "What about Zoe?" At first he didn't answer. He raked his fingers through his hair and seemed a little nervous about the question. "I suppose you want the truth, huh?" "Don't worry, Mr. O'Shea, I'm not writing any of this down," I told him. "All right, well, truthfully, Zoe Coyle's a little troublemaker. Anyone who tells you she didn't try to take advantage 24/7 is either lying or kissing up. And believe me, this school is full of kiss-ups." "I can believe that," I said honestly. "Don't get me wrong," he said. "I've been praying for those kids every night. But that girl's all about seeing what she can get away with. I chased her and her little smoking friends out of here more than once. And she would give me lip." He stopped as we came to the end of the passage. "Anyway, here we are." In front of us, there was a half flight of concrete steps up to another door. This was where the locators had been found, although the crime scene had been cleared days ago. There wasn't much to see now, but I needed to walk through here at least once. We kept going and emerged through the groundskeeping shed, which was about the size of my house. That put us on the school lawn next to a couple of practice fields and the south gate. Up the hill, past a line of old bur oaks, I could see the main building we'd just left behind. Very pretty landscaping, not the kind of scene you associated with tragedies. "That's where the kids came out, supposedly," O'Shea said, pointing up at the lecture hall windows. I suppose they did come out there." I turned in a full circle, taking it all in. Did they come this way? Were they conscious, drugged? "Kind of a straight line from up there, isn't it?" the custodian said. "Right through this spot and out that gate. You suppose that's where they took them?" "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. People don't always travel in straight lines. In fact, the ones who have something to hide usually don't." He nodded, a little like he was playing cop with me. "Well," he said, "you ought to know." Chapter 55. I spent the rest of the day talking to as many people at the Braniff School as I could. The students were strictly off limits until I could get parental consent, so I focused on the faculty and staff for the time being. Dale Skillings was the headmaster. He seemed